Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
6:06, it's O'Connor and Company, and this is the longtime historic home of the Washington Redskins. You know them now as the Command Skins, and we are thrilled that they are moving on to the next round of the playoffs. First time in 20 years, Julie Gunlock. That's a long time.
Yeah, it's exciting.
It's like the Bush administration. That was like ancient history. That's older than your kids. Your children have not been alive to see the Burgundy and Gold win a playoff game.
Big deal.
How about that? Were they excited yesterday?
Of course.
All right. Coming up later in this morning's program at 7:05, it'll be Joe DeGenova joining us. 7:35 will bring us Trevor Maddich. Talk about that clutch victory last night. 8:05 is Dr. Stanley Goldfarb of Do No Harm. And then 8:35, Joel Pollack, who has been reporting on the scene from Breitbart News at the Palisades fires because, well, that's his neighborhood. Joel, it turns out, his home was saved, Julie Gunlock.
Yes.
But it's one of those very eerie things where people, they had to evacuate. They did everything they could. They stayed until they couldn't stay anymore. They had to evacuate. And I haven't talked about this, but I have been through this. My parents' home in Laguna Beach back in 1994 was a very interesting year where we had this huge Northridge earthquake in Southern California. That's the earthquake that knocked down freeway overpasses, giant earthquake. We had the earthquakes. We had the Laguna Beach fires, and there were also fires up in Northridge, California at that time, too, and I believe in Simi Valley, California. It was a tough year that year for fires. Then we had these torrential rains. After the fires had burned all the brush off of the hillsides in Southern California, then the rains come, and because the brush is burned off, this erosion, these mudslides happen.
Oh,
because
that was terrible. Gosh.
The brush that grows there, the root systems keep the mountainsides and the hillsides intact.
Yes.
When it all burned away, then you had mudslides, and then you had these homes falling in. So and Laguna Beach is like that, where my parents lived. So I remember evacuating my parents from those fires. When you have to evacuate with a fire, you're evacuating because literally the fire is a block and a half away.
Yeah.
So as we were leaving the driveway with whatever possessions we could take out of my parents' home, we looked down the street, and there were these flames that were, as big as a house.
God.
So in the Palisades, we had these people experiencing that, including our guest coming up at 8:35, Joel Pollack. You leave, and then all you can do is just
wait,
and you have no idea. We were at a hotel. Because you couldn't really be somewhere and just stand there and watch, right? You had to go find shelter somewhere, and they want you off the roads. They don't want people milling about, right?
Right.
So we were at a hotel, and we were just trying to catch glimpses on television of shots of the fire and trying to figure out quickly, okay, is that our block? Is that our block?
Yeah,
Where's
because
the fire?
they do keep you out.
Oh, yes.
You're not going back in.
No, not until they let you back in. So we had this. So I remember I was watching Joel Pollack, and I've been trying to check with him. John Kahn, also from the Breitbart days. We just had him on because he recorded a song about Trump that Trump's been playing at rallies. John Kahn lost his home. He left. He came back. It was ashes. John Andrasik of Fight for Fighting, our friend, he evacuated. I was texting with him over the last week.
Oh.
He went back. His house was fine.
Oh,
the fire turned a
Good,
corner.
good.
Same with Joel Pollack. James Woods, the actor James Woods, as we played the audio of him on Fox News and on.
This made me cry.
He had to leave. And he had to evacuate. And the last video that he showed, if you saw the video, he was on his little balcony, his little terrace, and the flames were like a story higher than his deck.
Yes,
right there. Right against him, right against it.
Yeah, and it was the kind of thing where I saw that and I was like, "Get out!
Yeah,
go."
And this is what it was like on CNN last week when James Woods was sort of lamenting, because the last thing he saw was all of the fire alarms in his house going off. And he saw on his security cameras.
Yeah, it was interesting because he had security cameras. And one thing he said, though, is that he and his wife had installed sprinklers all on that hillside because you own that hillside.
Right. You have to. You're in charge of the maintenance of the hillside.
So he had installed sprinklers, and he said, "I hope this helps." Well, so then he leaves, and then he said, "We're getting notifications that the fire alarms are going off in our house," which was so sad because you thought it's on fire.
And that's all he had. And this is what he was like on CNN last week.
Sarah was on with her 8-year-old niece last night. She came out. I'm sorry. Just, one day you're swimming in the pool and the next day it's all gone. But she came out with her little Yeti piggy bank for us to rebuild our house.
Oh my gosh. James Woods, I
We all hope that you will be able to rebuild your house, maybe starting with that little Yeti piggy bank. And we're just glad that you're okay and your wife is okay.
I'm sorry.
You have your
I'm
lives.
usually.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is real and it's raw.
I thought I
and
would be
you,
stronger than this.
Yeah, and that sign of vulnerability and emotion just sort of captured, I think, so much, especially because we're used to James Woods on
Tough
film
guy.
being the tough guy, and certainly on social media being the tough guy.
And I think it's also important. People leave everything in their house. Yeah. It's not like, maybe you grab your birth certificate and a couple important documents, but people are not leaving with a carload of things.
So James Woods was finally allowed, like so many other residents of the Palisades, to return to inspect the damage and whatever was left of his home. And he shared on social media a miracle on Saturday.
Truly.
Sarah and Francis, whose father we saved, is now putting out fires on our hillside. Oh, Jesus, look at this. Oh, my God.
What he was showing was he was standing on that very deck that we thought had been destroyed with the flames coming up. Somehow his home is still intact. There's damage, but it's still intact. And that exasperated, oh my God, at the end there was as he was panning the hillside, and
there's nothing left.
Nothing left.
It really is a miracle.
Just rubble, but somehow James Woods' house was saved. That's really something else. And of course, horrible people. It's amazing at times like this when horrible people decide to be horrible. And people were responding to him saying, oh, so you lied on CNN. So you lied saying your house was destroyed. It was like, shut up. Use a brain.
Speaking of horrible people, that's a perfect segue into the next.
What's that?
Yeah, Meghan Markle was there.
Oh, she's not horrible. She's grossly misunderstood.
Please. I am disgusted by them showing up.
Meghan Markle and by the way, before I get accused of hypocrisy, I already have this trip scheduled to see my children, and I was not going to I just got back from Southern California. I wasn't going there to see the fires and to hug people as their homes were being. I was going there to visit my kids, knowing that they were far away from the fires.
Fine.
Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, on the other hand, hopped in their car
from Montecito,
drove down the Pacific Coast Highway from Montecito, and got right in the middle of everything. So that it was basically, here's what they were doing. It's like, how can we help? I don't know. Find the biggest camera crew.
Yes.
And make sure that we get in the middle of whatever they're looking at.
Yes.
And that's what they did.
And they apparently were like, first of all, they looked lost. They didn't look like they knew what they were supposed to be doing.
Right.
And eventually they were handing out like water bottles or something. But this, there's a couple words that I saw trotted out on Twitter, tragedy tourists and crisis tourists and grief tourists. It's gross. And there was another picture on Twitter of Meghan Markle sort of climbing over some debris. And a man who had lost his home commented, if she were in my home climbing over the wreckage of my home. And, people are finding their children's art. They're finding old photos. They're going into the rubble of their home, and they are finding things. And this man said, and she's climbing over it, probably to get a better vantage point for the camera crews.
Right.
It's just sickening.
And
what
then she
are you
grabbed
doing
a bullhorn and she said, the people who did this are going to hear from all of us soon. Wait a second. So we have some more news about Meghan Markle because as we tell you about her and about how she's being a crisis tourist there for the fires, I'm sure you're wondering, yes, but what about her Netflix series? We want to see Meghan Markle cooking. Well, we're going to tell you what's going on with that and also some other cooks who are some pretty high-profile people who were in the middle of the fire relief in Los Angeles as well in a moment. First, though, at 6:15, WMAL traffic and weather every 10 minutes. First on the 5s, Jamie Witten's in the Biden-awarded Presidential Medal of Froopy Froppy Floppy. None of it all makes... I don't have no idea... all of these presidential medals to people like Liz Cheney and George Soros. It's like I can't even keep them straight anymore.
Yeah, neither can Liz. And Liz was just like, keep the medal. I need the pardon.
Right. Well, Jose Andres, the same chef who was seen posing in a picture with the guy who is guilty of the second assassination attempt on Donald Trump, and tried to falsely accuse Israel of trying to murder his chefs over there, providing aid and comfort to terrorists. That Jose Andres, he airlifted himself into the middle of the relief effort.
Because that's what he does.
He does. Well, and he also charges, $500 for a tasting menu at Rose's Laundry or whatever.
No, it's Minibar. Isn't it Minibar?
Minibar, but also he's got 3 Michelin star
Tapas
restaurants here in
place.
D.C. Anyway, it's not bad food. He's just annoying.
I've never been a huge fan of the Tapas place.
Anyway, he flew himself in there, and he got lots of attention, lots of network cameras, lots of people talking to him. I don't know if he said something about immigration while he was there. That's usually all he cares about. He pulled out of the Trump hotel, even though he had a contract. Trump sued him and won, by the way, which was beautiful. By the way, did you see that the Trumps are actively pursuing reacquiring the hotel?
I'm so excited.
We need a speakeasy in this town. We need to be able to hang out downtown.
Yeah, but Jose Andre going into the fight. I mean, I know that the World Central Kitchen, he does a lot of good, but there is just this aspect. It's LA. There's plenty of chefs there. There's plenty of restaurants there. The Jollibee. There's all these restaurants that are giving away free food. This just sort of, again, crisis tourism, crisis publicity,
For instance, Calico Fish House is in Huntington Beach. It's owned by Chef Andrew Gruel.
Yes.
We've had him on this program before. He immediately set up his restaurant in Huntington Beach as a clearinghouse for donations, for food, for clothing, for diapers, for anything. It's situated, Huntington Beach is basically about 15 miles into Orange County. It's a great place. If you're evacuating LA County, if you're evacuating, it's right down on Coast Highway. You can head down there, and it's sort of like, okay, we're safe here. You can take a breather. Not in the middle of it, not, trying to be, where all the cameras are.
Yeah.
Chef Gruel has set up this incredible operation from nothing, and he's seeing, this incredible outpouring of people from Southern California, not because cameras are there, but because that's where people are in need, and that's where people are getting.
I just think that we've seen reports of other restaurants and other people doing giveaways and feeding the first responders. And I don't know, it's just Jose Andre going in there. And
I've got to think the world.
They're going to starve without Jose Andre, please.
Yeah, I don't think Jose has missed a meal lately, by the way, too. It seems like the World Central Kitchen at this point could probably set up operations without Chef Andre sitting in the middle of it.
He
Right?
goes where the cameras are, just like Meghan Markle.
But good for Chef Gruel, by the way,
Yes.
and all the things that he and his wife
And
Lauren are
Gruel,
doing.
yes.
All right, so we've hit all of the top culinary superstars, right? We got Jose Andres.
Now on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
6:37 here on O'Connor and Company on a Monday morning in your nation's capital. 1 week from Inauguration Day, and then Trump 47 begins. Buckle up, the roller coaster. Well, we're already sort of on that roller coaster, and, it's a blast. Coming up later this morning at 7:05, Joe DeGenova will be our guest. 7:35, Trevor Maddich will reflect on last night's clutch victory for the Commanders. 8:05, Dr. Stanley Goldfarb from Do No Harm. And then at 8:35, Joe Pollack will give us his firsthand report from the Pacific Palisades in Los Angeles. It's Larry O'Connor with Julie Gunlock. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
And listen, we are focusing on this fire, first of all, because it's a great, important human story right now that's going on in this country. There's also major politics involved with this. You've got no water because of protecting the little smelt fish. You've got poor forest management because they've kowtowed to the Sierra Club and to the. By the way, I just want to point out this. This is something. When I went to high school in Southern California, this became an issue. There were eucalyptus trees all over Southern California. I don't know if you drive there and you see them. Eucalyptus trees are not indigenous to California. Mm-hmm. These are an invasive tree. They were brought in from Australia by home builders, by people who make
Really?
suburbs, and they're not indigenous to
idea.
North America, let alone Southern California. They brought them in because they grow well in arid areas. They look nice, and they grow rather quickly. So when they were, urban sprawl in Southern California and started creating all of these new subdivisions in Orange County and the Irvine Company and all of this stuff, they brought in eucalyptus to sort of, that became part of the landscaping thing. This is back.
Landscape trivia.
There you go. You don't know this stuff.
6:38 in the morning.
This is back in the 70s. Here's the problem with eucalyptus trees. You've heard of eucalyptus oil, right?
Yes.
That comes from eucalyptus trees. It's flammable.
Oh, gosh.
So, and again, this is something that we were talking about in the 80s when I was living in Southern California. These eucalyptus trees, you've got to clear all that because that stuff is so combustible. Because not only is it dry wood and dry leaves, but it's also got oil in it. Yeah. And this is an invasive tree. So then the state of California started to get wise. And it's like, you know what, let's get rid of these eucalyptus trees. Let's clear them out. The environmentalists came in. You can't get rid of those trees. It's like, wait a minute, they're not even from here.
Yeah.
We brought them here and planted them.
Anything. It doesn't matter. Anything you want to do.
Can't get rid of the trees. Nope. So all of these things that have gone on there.
Koala bears.
And then the budgets have been cut for $17.5 million, famously, it's been said, about Karen Bass's LA City budget got cut out of the LA Fire Department. There aren't enough firefighters there because of the DEI policies that are repelling people who would normally want to grow up and be firemen. But because we call strong men who want to take care of business and protect their families and their communities toxic masculinity, and the emphasis from the leadership there has been anything but, if you're a white man, need not apply, then people just don't show up and suddenly you've got a shortage there. And so all of the reason that we're focusing on all of those things, it's not politicizing the fire. It's pointing to the policies that led us to this place in the first place where fires can't be controlled properly. Part of it is because they want to do that. Democrats, I mean, and environmentalists and liberal progressive activists would love to do that right here in Virginia. They're already doing it right here in Maryland and right here in Washington, D.C. And Gavin Newsom, I've been warning you for a decade now, Gavin Newsom wants to be president of the United States, and he has huge momentum to try to get there. And he is so shameless in his lies in immediately turning this on he's obviously at fault in so many of this, and he immediately says, well, it's really Republicans.
Well, it's not just that.
Trump.
I mean, think of what he did. He sort of took a page out of Trump's playbook and went in the middle of this disaster. There are still fires burning. He spent 3 hours on a podcast.
Yeah.
Pod Saves America. I mean, who in the world does he think?
Because the real tragedy in all of this is that people are lying about Gavin Newsom, and he needs to save it. That's what he needs to say.
That's exactly right.
So last week we saw that the LA fire chief had been celebrated up until this moment because, as the local reporters said without irony, she checks a lot of boxes.
Yes, she does.
She's a woman. She's LGBTQ. Yep. She's all of these things.
Yep.
And Karen Bass, who also, by the way, checks a lot of boxes because she didn't run as a competent person who can run City of LA. She ran as I will be the first black woman to be the mayor of Los Angeles.
Yes.
And well, that was enough, I suppose, because she was running against a white man, a rich white man, by the way.
Right.
Well, it came out that the LA Fire Department's budget was to be cut by $17.5 million. That was just scratching the surface, actually, of the incompetent city management from Karen Bass. And now we're reaching the Squid Games portion of the tragedy, as the Democrats are all now going to be gleefully trying to destroy each other so that they don't go down in the heap of carnage that is about to be here. Gavin Newsom will be the one who survives. He is the cockroach that survives the apocalypse. But here's the fire chief, Kristen Crowley, going on CNN saying, yeah, that mayor sucks.
Let me be clear. The $17 million budget cut and the elimination of our civilian positions like our mechanics did and has and will continue to severely impact our ability to repair our apparatus. So,
by the way, this is the exact same time so-called fact checkers for the left have been out there saying there wasn't really a $17 million budget cut.
No.
That's not true.
I mean, they're going to take the Schiff strategy here and just lie their way through this.
None of anything,
reservoirs were full. There were no cuts.
Everything you're hearing from talk radio and from conservative critics and Donald Trump is a lie. And here's the fire chief saying, oh, yeah, not only was the budget cut real, it severely impacted our ability to fight these fires. A little bit more on this. And the mayor responding back, this is Squid Games. This is absolutely, they're going after each other.
Yeah.
Okay, either way, and we're here for it. Pop the popcorn. If only human lives and property and entire fortunes and
if
memories.
If only this swayed the voters to consider maybe a competent mayoral candidate.
It's 6:43.
Making sense of your world.
Thank you for what you do.
News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
You give me hope.
Making sense of the news.
You know much more about eucalyptus trees than you ever knew.
Later this morning on the Chris Plante Show, President Trump may not have been sentenced to jail, but he was sentenced to a lot of really negative headlines. 9 a.m. on WMAL.
The fire department needs help. We can no longer sustain where we are. We do not have enough firefighters. With that, I have also requested multiple budgets, interim budgets, to show how understaffed, under-resourced, and underfunded the LEFD is. So with that, also, we have clear data that shows the LEFD needs more help.
Data? We don't need data. We look at the hillside and the rubble and ashes. I'd love the city council probably says, sure, you say you need more help in the fire department, but where's your data?
Look, I'm not. I think most people are horrified to see that the budget was cut by $17 million. But let's also talk about the fact that those reservoirs were empty, that those hydrants were not working. I mean, I get that the fire chief is now on a fundraising sort of mission of her own right now, and fair enough because of those cuts. But again, it was much more than just this funding. It was decades of abandoning what needed to be done in order to be prepared for these fires.
Can I just also say, having lived in Southern California for so long, LA City did not cut their budget, okay? They moved money from the fire department's budget. But if a reporter really wants to, make some bones and maybe get some clicks, find out what they did spend money on.
Yeah.
Find out where that $17 million went.
DEI programs, I'll just throw it out there.
Mayor Bass responded.
Let me just say that, as you see here, the chief and I are lockstep in our number one mission. And that mission is to get us past this emergency right now. We want to make sure that we save lives, we save housing, we save businesses, and if there are differences that we have, we will continue to deal with those in private.
Ooh, what does that tell you? Also, by the way, this has been glossed over. People forget. This woman, Karen Bass, before she became mayor, she was a congresswoman from Southern California. She was on Joe Biden's short list to become vice president. Because, Joe Biden's criteria was, I need a black woman. It's got to be a black woman. I don't know.
She checks a lot of boxes.
How awful must you be and how incompetent must you be that Kamala Harris beat you out? For the job. Imagine being up for a job to Kamala Harris and she gets it. That's how bad Karen Bass is.
Karen Bass is really, in terms of Washington, not really noticeable. She didn't do anything remarkable.
Non-entity, but she
was a backbencher, kind of not remarkable. Didn't really have much of a resume to speak of.
I'm sorry. Let me just repeat. Joe Biden's criteria was you have to be a black woman.
I know.
That was it. That's
but,
what he was looking for.
And then
so
and she's elected to this position and then goes off to Ghana when she knew these wins were coming.
Which, by the way, during the primary process, there was lots of concerns from other politicians and her rivals saying, she's a congresswoman, she's got a national, she doesn't want to be a mayor, she doesn't want to actually focus on things. And she said, and somebody said, oh, you do all these trips because you're on the Foreign Affairs Committee. And she literally promised during the campaign that she would not go on a foreign trip as mayor of Los Angeles. And here she is in Ghana during these devastating fires. But she's a Democrat in L.A. You think that's going to hurt her?
No.
Come on.
Right. You're absolutely
That's
right.
better than kryptonite right there. Repel any concerns. Gavin Newsom said once again that he knows where the real problems are. Number one, Donald Trump has got to be stopped. That's his focus. Number two, people are taking advantage of the disaster.
We're dealing with a myriad of issues. I was just talking to Josh Green, the governor down in Hawaii, who had some ideas around some land use concerns he has around speculators coming in, buying up properties and the like. So we're already working with our legal teams to move those things forward, and we'll be presenting those in a matter of days.
Speculators are coming. This is the kind of language that they used back after the Civil War, by the way. Speculators are coming in. In other words, there are people coming in, lives are devastated, they don't have insurance, there's no way they can rebuild, and so people are coming in and saying, listen, I'll buy your property for X amount of money. Gavin Newsom's going to stop that from happening.
Yes, exactly.
Because he doesn't want so-called speculators to come in and purchase up these properties. And by the way, some of them may be bad people, but some families may be desperate for that kind of sale and that kind of transaction. All right, a little bit more here. Maria Shriver, lifelong Democrat, ex-wife to Arnold Schwarzenegger. They're divorced now, aren't they? I believe they are. Ex-wife to Arnold Schwarzenegger. So she was the first lady of the state of California at one point. She says, and she's, I think, an employee in good standing for NBC News, if I remember right. L.A. cannot go forward with the status quo. L.A. is no longer what it was. It has to be different. It has to prioritize the safety of its citizens, police, fire, schools. L.A. residents deserve better. Chief Crowley is saying L.A. cannot sustain itself. It needs more help. Chief Crowley says she rang the bell. The mayoral race presented a clear choice last time around. Moving forward, L.A. residents have to decide what's important and what's not. Right now, what's more important is getting this fire under control, getting firefighters the support they need, getting our neighbors the support they need. Once that happens, it's time to rethink what is and imagine what can be. That sounds like, you know what that sounds like to me? Mayor Kamala Harris is on her way in.
Joy.
Yeah.
Just pure joy.
She's ready. Maria Shriver is ready for the... So basically, what Maria Shriver is the status quo.
She is.
Maria Shriver is exactly the establishment. She doesn't even live in Los Angeles, by the way.
And the wealthy of California, these wealthy stars who are usually protected from this kind of stuff. They don't have to deal with high grocery prices and energy prices and gas and all that stuff. They now are upset, right? And they're going to blame climate change, which is the main thing. They're not going to ever change. What Maria Shriver just said, she'll vote for the next Democrat that comes down the line.
She's probably angling to be the next Democrat that comes down the line. 6:53. I want to tell you about the amazing, wonderful,